Well, good day and welcome back to another one. This one is all about, we're going to largely be about the England versus All Blacks game that was on the weekend. I'm going to give you my thoughts of sort of a recap or a review of that game. We've been able to give it a few days to sort of digest it, talk about it, rethink it. I've actually watched it again to make some notes where I was away on the weekend, so I haven't been able to track rugby as much as I'd like. So I'm going to just, before I get into the All Blacks England game, I'm just going to quickly recap on a few of the results that happened over the weekend. Samoa versus Italy. Samoa winning that 33-25. I feel like that was a little bit of an upset, but certainly Samoa will be wrapped with that result. They scored a good try towards the end of the game to sort of seal that one. So well done to them playing at home in Samoa. We don't see enough of the test matches of teams outside of the Pacific nations playing in the Pacific nations. So that was very cool seeing Italy play in Samoa. Georgia lost to Fiji 12-21 over in Georgia. USA losing to Romania 2022. Japan 15 beating the New Zealand Māori 26-14. And don't forget that the New Zealand Māori won last week. The Japan 15 could have been a bit more competitive. They played pretty well, but they did squander a number of opportunities last week, and so this time round they were able to sort of rectify that. Australia beating Wales 25-16. Joe Smith's first game in charge, and a heck of a good start really. Australia didn't do very well at the World Cup, as we all know, and they haven't been performing that well. Some of their Super Rugby teams have, and some of the players are in form, but to try and pull that together, I think they should feel pretty happy with that. They'll get a bit of confidence, but it certainly sets up a really good game this weekend, of course. And the Welsh will be a little bit disappointed. They had a try disallowed, and it wasn't a try, but they were just within a whisker of scoring from a driving maul off a line out. That was disallowed, so that would have levelled the scores at that time. That was sort of, in the second half, midway through the second half. And then don't forget the Australian try with 10 minutes to go was Tom Wright's special, breaking the line, then beating the fullback to score a very, very good solo try. So you know it was a close game, and it will be another good contest this weekend. Then South Africa beat Ireland 27-20 in an extremely physical contest. Very intense, a lot on the line, of course, and the Irish, they were getting a bit frustrated towards the end. The referee wouldn't even communicate with the captain in very tense conditions. So, as we are to expect from South Africa, extremely physical and in your face, not uncompromising, and they don't give away much, do they? Argentina losing to France in Argentina, that was an upset of some proportion, certainly by the bookmakers. They didn't have Argentina winning that one. They didn't have the French winning that one. The French had 6 debutants and winning comfortably 28-13. Canada lost to Scotland winning very comfortably there. So let's get into the All Blacks versus England. That was the main game I got to watch over the weekend. All Blacks winning 16-15, 1 point in it, coming down to the wire. Epic clash, really. I think it's one that we will look back on for a while, and England will feel like that was one that got away. Certainly, if you can, you're within one score or even within a penalty kick, that was their opportunity, or certainly their best opportunity to win a game in New Zealand for a very long time. But man, they were up for it. They really were. So certainly, right from the start, I'm going to sort of work my way through the game and point out a few thoughts that I had on moments that were relatively important. So it was a heck of a frantic start. The pace of the game was quite extreme, and it was certainly quite hard to keep up with. Worth mentioning, Itoje. I mean, right from the gate, he was a key player in the game. The turnover he made on Mark Talia early on was like taking candy from a baby. Anyway, Mark Talia may as well have just given him the ball. So it was on straight away. The intensity and the contact was at a whole nother level. The All Blacks players haven't seen that or experienced that since the last World Cup. and which is 8 months ago. England, of course, have been able to play a fair bit of Test rugby since the World Cup throughout the Six Nations competition. Great scrum battle. Ethan de Groot earning a penalty at the 10th minute, and my comment on the scrum throughout the game was that relatively even contest, but the All Blacks performed probably slightly better than I had expected, earning a few penalties from scrums. The All Blacks' first try, in fact, went to Severus off a wipers kick, which was from a penalty advantage from a scrum. And that was a really good opportunity for the All Blacks. I think they'll look to do that again this weekend, where if there's a penalty awarded, they play on. A lot of other countries might just play percentage football at that time, but they played on with a wipers kick, and the wipers kick option was used a few times. With the pace of England's line speed, that is one way to get the ball to the edge, and the ball went straight to Reece. He stepped, managed to get across the line, so that sort of kicked things off from a scoring point of view. Joe Marlos was subbed at around the 18th minute for the youngest looking prop I've ever seen at international level, but he played pretty well, to be fair to him. Marcus Smith, I just made a comment there, he should never have put a grubber in at around that 20-minute mark when the English finally got into the All Blacks 22. It was certainly a tactic for England to kick when they were in the All Blacks half. I don't know if that will be quite the same this coming weekend, but it was definitely a tactic at that moment for that play. I don't think it was the right one. I believe England had roughly an overlap there, and they should have put it through the hands to give that a go. And in terms of scrum, after Joe Marler went off, it didn't make much of a difference. The All Blacks earned another penalty from a scrum, and that led to Ardie Savea's try off a great break by Stephen Perofeta. So another try from a penalty advantage as well. Worth pointing out that certainly the All Blacks played at the whistle, but they really try and have a go when they have that penalty advantage. Why not, right? Stephen Perofeta making a really good play there, and played reasonably well, it's fair to say, in his first test for a little while, but at fullback as well. The All Blacks should have kicked out at halftime, I think, is a fair way to put it, or a nice way to put it. But they played on. I guess they were playing on at that point because they finally had some ball. I wouldn't even say they had territory, and England drove them back into the All Blacks half with their defence. It was just intense at that time, and actually managed to get a turnover or earn a penalty and kick 3 points to level the scores 10-all at half time. Quite a pivotal moment. All Blacks will learn from that. It's Test rugby. You gotta if you have that slight advantage, take it. TJ Perenara, he didn't return in the second half. Of course, he had an injury. He played on, but unfortunate incident, and I don't suspect he'll be playing this weekend. So into the second half now, England earned a scrum penalty. I think that was more or less, I think it was All Blacks ball in their own half, in the All Blacks half, but there was a bit of a misunderstanding, I think, or miscommunication, and Finlay Christie sort of stepped back thinking Ardie Savea was going to run it off the back, and the referee said, no, you're taking too long. So Marcus Smith had an opportunity, but he missed an easy one, and that was a really, really key moment as well. But England managed to stay in the All Blacks half for the I think it worked out to be about the first 10 minutes of that second half, and after Savea managed to get a turnover when I guess the English were about 5 metres out from the line, or 5 to 10 metres out from the line. But so All Blacks cleared, but then the English came back, forced their way back into the All Blacks half there, and scored a really good try right out on the wing. Couple of long passes. That was around the 47-minute mark, and that was the final point scored by England in the game. At that point, there was still over 30 minutes remaining, but at that moment, anyway, that was 15-10, so England scoring the first try after half time, and they had all the momentum, and it wasn't looking good for the All Blacks. But yeah, look, the All Blacks had to work very hard for their 2 penalty goals in that second half over quite a period of time. I think the All Blacks finally took the lead at the 65th minute to with their second penalty and putting the scores at 16-15. Of course, that's where the scores stayed. But I don't know how there was a few other moments later in the game, but I in sort of those last 10 minutes or last 10 to 15 minutes, and I don't know how there wasn't an England offside penalty and then a not releasing penalty from the Sevu Reece tackle after the All Blacks had put the high ball in, and that was around the 73rd minute. So I think within that sort of minute period, there was two penalties that were relatively clear that were missed. I think it was a Georgian ref. I don't suspect he will get too many opportunities at that level. I wouldn't say he was bad, but there was a couple of and that goes both ways. I think I got another comment about an English penalty too. But yeah, so that was around the 73rd minute. But then Damian McKenzie had an opportunity to kick for penalty, so he took too long. And in that situation, you could consider it to have been time wasting. I think there was a minute left on the clock. He knew that either way, whether he missed or not, there wasn't going to be much time left for England to have another go. So, so I would say yes, it was time wasting, because remember, that's really what this is all about. They set time limits, don't they, for set piece or kicks, dropouts, whatever, for a reason. And so the referee was probably correct at that point. But an absolute shocker for Damian McKenzie. I know that there's been quite a lot of analysis done on that and working out when that moment, when the clock starts ticking. So New Zealand Rugby has made a decision that they're going to put a clock up on the big screen for these scenarios going forward. I don't think Damian McKenzie should change much about what he's doing, but I think in that moment he puts this little grin on, he's doing a couple of looks. I think he took the extra look, which he normally doesn't do, and that was probably the difference. So I don't think he'll change much about what he does, but we'll see. And it was a dominant All Black scrum, and then I think there was another ruck there where Finlay Christie was all over the ball there trying to turn it over. The Englishman didn't release, and that was missed as well. But yeah, look, the final play of the game, England really had a chance to still win that game. They kept themselves in it, and I'll talk about a few other thoughts generally speaking, but that was sort of the recap of the sequence of the game. That last penalty could have gone either way, really. I think that... I don't know. It doesn't come down to those moments, but in that case, it kind of did. The English had an opportunity. If they got a penalty, they had an opportunity to actually win that game. In the end, it went with New Zealand's favour. So let me just share my general thoughts. England, they kicked too much in the All Blacks half, as I touched on before. It was certainly a tactic. It was intentional. I don't suspect they'll do that again this weekend. And I would certainly recommend against that, because I feel like, well, I'll explain later, but the All Blacks will be better off for this hit-out first game of the season and all that. But look, the England defence was absolutely superb. There was the two All Blacks tries in the first half. They didn't give the All Blacks much territory in the second half. The line speed was incredible and really gave the All Blacks no room. Now, pretty much most attacks in the world like a bit of space and a bit of room to move. The All Blacks were going to need... They did have other options. They did use a few options, passes over the top to get it out wide. Damian McKenzie still managed to get it out wide, all things considered. The cross kick, but there needs to be a little bit more than that, and so the All Blacks have got to find a way to counter that, because that will come. I think the biggest surprise for me was that line speed was maintained for the whole game. Full credit to England, because they looked at moments that they were tiring, but they kept going. Very physical. England were very physical and well in this game, although I felt the All Blacks were slightly better in the last sort of, that 30 minutes, the last 30 minutes of the second half. England certainly dominated in that first 10 minutes of the second half, but I felt like it was, you just felt like the All Blacks, and they didn't score, but you felt like they were going to, but they had control of the game But yeah, England was still in a position to win that at the end. You could tell England tired, as I said before, but they still managed to dig deep and keep the All Blacks from scoring that second half and still put themselves in a position to win, firing one last shot at the end there. But massive effort, and would be fair to feel like they missed out on this one, as I said right at the beginning. They will look back at that and feel a little bit like that one. You know, when you're that close, those are your opportunities that don't come across very often. It was a big team effort, and Itoje and Earls, they were standouts for me. Marcus Smith was pretty quiet there. Didn't feel like the English had a lot of ball in that second half in particular. Certainly didn't nail his goal kicking, and that was all but the difference. But again, Damian McKenzie missed a couple there as well, and that, you know, but you need that scoreboard pressure, and there was opportunities that were missed there. The All Blacks were, I guess, you know, rusty, being their first game of the season. As you could appreciate, it's pretty typical. I talked about that in my previous video, that this was a really good opportunity for England, whereas the All Blacks they will step up and they will be better than that. But I think the English can be better too, so I'm expecting both teams to lift again this weekend. But yeah, the All Blacks made a number of mistakes that weren't, they were typical of their first game of the year, but they were put under, but to be fair to England in that sense, that the All Blacks were put under a lot of pressure. The All Blacks did enough to win, and I think they'll look to exploit some missed opportunities next week. They've now got a lot of analysts to work with, and that experience, but such an even contest, both teams defending really well and making key turnovers when they had to. You know, both teams managed to sort of get into the opposition 22, and both teams managed to turn the ball over in key moments. So it was just a complete backwards and forwards affair. And as I said, very even. McKenzie was great under the high ball, not given really any space to work with, but he still managed to get the ball to wingers, as I explained before. And even though he made a mistake, and it was pretty much, you know, the biggest mistake of the game, or a massive blunder with the time on the penalty, he deserves another start, in my opinion. Although my recommendation is probably get Jordie Barrett to kick goals, but we'll see what they do. Persevering and working, you know, committing to someone being the goal kicker is probably not a bad option. But for me, I wouldn't mind seeing Jordie kick goals and let McKenzie release that pressure, and so he can just control the game. Look at controlling the game. Not many changes for me. For the All Blacks in particular, I don't think the English will make too many either. But in terms of the All Blacks, I think Beauden Barrett will start. He'll be better off with a hit out. Of course, he hadn't played too much rugby since leaving Japan and coming back to New Zealand. Certainly not at a higher level of rugby as well. The Japanese rugby is a fair bit different to even Super Rugby. Of course, there'll be a change at halfback. TJ Perenara unlikely to play there, I don't think so. Finlay Christie looks like he'll get that start, which I actually thought would have been a better option in this game. He'll get the ball quicker to Damian McKenzie and just give him that little bit extra time, which I think is really important because of that English line speed. Let's see how that unfolds, and I'd say Cortez Ratama will be on the bench. I would like to see Caleb Clarke on the bench if Beauden Barrett starts. I said that in the first team that I would have preferred that when I made that video, and then I would also like I figured Luke Jacobson would be that reserve loose forward, and there's good reason for that. He can cover all positions and he's experienced. However, Finau was great. I'd probably give him another go. He was quiet. It wasn't great. He wasn't standout, but he does offer that physicality. And of course, he's relatively inexperienced, and that game was quite intense. And he'll be much better off for that. So you've got to give him a go. I think I would keep the forward pack as it was. No changes for me. Although there's a bit of talk about whether Dalton Papali'i or Satiti, I probably would have, rather than starting with Satiti, I'd probably have him on the bench instead of Jacobson. That's probably what I would do. Otherwise, I'd keep that bench the same. Of course, halfback's changing, and then I wouldn't mind bringing Caleb Clarke in. But anyway, just to finish off that test, it was an absolute classic, and it sets up a very, very intriguing second test. I wish it was a 3-test series, as I said. Don't it's always good to sort of look back, and the most recent 3-test series here in New Zealand was the Irish, and they won two tests to 1, and set another record for wins against All Blacks and for the Irish and all of that. It would have been so great to have that this tournament this year. But we've got 2 tests. New Zealand winning by 1 point. England will feel like they had a chance to win that. They'll have a lot of confidence from that, and I'm expecting another close game. I'll do a bit of probably a preview video before this weekend's game. So please do look out for that. But I feel like it'll be a very close one. All Blacks at Eden Park. Unlikely they'll lose, of course, but the English will throw everything at it. I know that they really did throw everything at this Dunedin game. That was the one they targeted. But because they were so close, I feel like they'll take a lot of confidence from that. They'll tweak and improve some of the things that they did as well. So I'm expecting both teams to step up again, and it's going to be very interesting. I will be there. I'm really looking forward to it. If you have watched this, thank you so much. Please let me know your thoughts on the game, especially if you're an English fan. I look at it from my point of view, but I want to know if you feel there was some calls that the English were hard done by. And I want to know, because I feel like there were a few of those. And Jamie George spoke exceptionally well when sort of faced with that type of question after the game. Really enjoyed hearing what he had to say. He is a class man. Thank you so much. Look out for the next one, and we'll see you soon. Cheers.